From early childhood on, each of us learns what it means to be invited, to be personally asked to go somewhere or to do something. Think about it in your preschool and elementary time frame of life. A friend says to you, "Can you come over and play at my house?" Happens over and over. We have this ongoing cycle of birthdays as a child where you end up going to Chuck E. Cheese or Build-A-Bear or movies or Shadowlands. We're asked throughout life to try out for things, for a team, a club, a play, a job, a program of sorts. We're asked in life to dance. We're asked to go to a concert or to a neighborhood function. People reach out to us to be a part of their life celebrations. First communion, bar mitzvahs, confirmations, weddings, retirements, anniversaries. We say to people, join me on a mission trip, join me for this youth event, join me in serving in the community, or join me for coffee, or for lunch, or for dinner. When we are invited, somebody wants us to be involved and included, and we have that option to say yes or to say no. Sometimes in life, though, we are not invited to something that we really wish to be a part of, something that matters to us, yet we don't seem to make the cut. And in life, we know that can be very disappointing, it can be upsetting, and indeed it is often very memorable, and it can leave you asking questions like, why not me? Am I not worthy? Am I not good enough? It can cause anger and bitterness and sometimes friction between people. It can even bring us to tears at times. And you recognize in those moments it's so important and so helpful to have listening ears around you, or a shoulder to cry on, or someone to cheer you up or be by your side. In Jesus' day, the ones who would have gotten the invites were the chief priests, the Pharisees, and elders. They were the elites of the Jewish world, the rulers of the temple. They were the ones in charge. They were in a position to serve other people. But you recognize when you're in a position where you're held up in high esteem like they were, it can go to your head and can cause behavior and attitudes that become problematic. You can get the sense of, I'm better than you, or I'm more faithful to you, or I'm closer to God. And that is the sense that Jesus is sort of challenging them today. Because he was sort of saying, you have this feeling of superiority. You're sort of excluding other people by your attitudes and your behavior. It can lead you to forget your role as a servant first and foremost. It's an adventure in missing the point, and that's what Jesus is really challenging them on. Brendan Manning says that those who followed Jesus around were often misfits and ragamuffins. They were the people who would have been left out, excluded, deemed inferior, and not as important to the Jewish elite of the day. But these misfits and ragamuffins followed Jesus around Galilee. They followed him to Jerusalem. They followed him as he rode triumphantly on a donkey into the city just 2 days earlier. And here he is on Tuesday of what we would call Holy Week. He's challenging the religious elites, and no doubt these misfits and ragamuffins are probably close by listening in. But these, as we talked about last week, these leaders looked at Jesus and said, what do you think you're up to? What do you think you're really all about? Who gave you this authority? They try to put Jesus in his place. What they're trying to do is show him as a fake, show him as being inferior and flawed. And Jesus looks them in the eye and tells them 3 stories kind of about themselves. We looked at the first 2 last week, and the third one is what I just read. It's about a king who throws a wedding banquet for his son. It means that the king has decided the guest list. The king is the one who has the power to invite or not to invite. So what would happen is the king would make a long list of names. He would send his servants out, and he would personally invite those people by their name. He would get their RSVP. Can you come or not? Bill, can you come? Tomo, can you come? And you would give them an answer, yes or no. But what you need to see is that the guest list has already been decided as Jesus begins the story. After the king knows how many people are coming, let's just say 1,000 people have said yes to the king. This meal for 1,000 people would have been set in motion. Preparation would begin. Food would have been, the cooks would have started going. Tables would have been set up, decorations, music, probably not balloons. But when all is ready, the servants would be sent out a second time to the people who had already RSVP'd, with this sort of courtesy reminder to the guests who had said yes, sort of the old dinner bell. Time to come, all is ready. And in our day, when someone is preparing a wedding, and I have working with a lot of people on their wedding prep right now, generally you can assume a certain percentage of folks won't be able to come. So the sweet spot is figuring out how many people do you actually want to come, assuming a certain percentage are going to say no, so you invite this amount of people. They pay consultants to help figure out what's the right ratios. Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 20%. But you shell out major dollars for this, so anyone who says yes, you sure want them to show up. And if they don't, you know it's going to burn a little bit inside. So Jesus looks at the Pharisees, and as he tells this story of the wedding banquet, essentially what he's saying is not one person came to the wedding. They all refused the invitation when they said they were going to come. They all stood him up. And it's far more than this just standard percentage of people who may not come. This is literally every single person in the story is rejecting the invite. Josephus, the first century historian, says this is a flat-out rejection. This is a planned rebellion against the king. It means something is up about this king that they didn't like him, or there was a failure. They're publicly trying to shame the king, show their disapproval of him, but it is a rebellion. And clearly the king was irritated by all this. He's really irritated. All the preparations have been made, sort of as we illustrated with the kids. What do you do when all is there? And what the king says is, he says to his servants, go out and personally invite everyone you find. We can just come up with a new guest list. And that new guest list basically is every single person you encounter along the way. They are a treasured guest just waiting to be asked. So invite, and say to them, the king desires your company. The king wants to eat with you. And what I like about the story is the servants go and do as they're told. And the wedding hall is filled with the previously uninvited people. Previously uninvited. You know, as Jesus tells that story, really what he's trying to do to those Pharisees, to the religious elites, to us in every generation, is he's painting a vision of God that counters the Pharisees' exclusiveness, their separate ways, their superiority, their one-upsmanship. Basically, he counters the notion that God sees some as better than others. Rather, what he's saying in the story is treat all people as treasured and honored guests, invite them, and when you invite them, it just may indeed change their life. You know, the conclusion of that story is one about someone who wasn't wearing a wedding garment. And when you wear, the social science commentary of the Bible says that, the king would have had lots of garments around to hand out to people who may have been working in the fields. He would have garments on hand to hand them, a coat or a tie. You get that image. But the really is the people who have been invited have been handed something to wear, and they simply refuse to put it on. In a sense, it's an image of someone invited who refused to change, refused to be, refused to have their life changed by God. It means they've ignored the king or took the faith for granted, but it says they were unprepared to be moved by the graciousness of being included. It's a powerful story for the Christian church in every generation to embrace, because it reminds us who we are, who we aren't, and really what our charge is in daily life. As God's people, we are never, ever part of an exclusive club, as if following Jesus makes us better than other people. Nor do we ever want to be people who take the faith for granted. You and I, we are people on that guest list. We have been personally welcomed and loved for who we are. We've been blessed in countless ways by gifts from God, by Jesus, our King. We've been included, and we need to see our life. Our entire life is a treasured included guest of God, and part of that grand celebration is the role we play. And that role we play in this life is not just to sit still and enjoy and say, well, it's me and Jesus. Our role is the role of the servants. The role of the servants throughout the story, in every aspect of the story, is they go out and they invite, and they invite, and they personally keep on inviting other people. It's not a problem that some say no, they just keep on inviting. You know, the church truly finds itself. The church truly finds joy. The church really experiences grand hope and renewal when it does far more than just serve in community service. The church finds great joy when it actually intentionally says to someone, be a part of the church. Be a part of what Jesus is doing in the world. You know, the words of invitation are a must. You know, last week when we issued this one-year call for Pastor Matt to serve at Epiphany, what we're saying to Epiphany is, if you're going to grow, you need to invite, and include more into your midst. You have a great message to share. Now go out and do it. You know, they have a saving message, and so do we. And if we want to encourage them to reach out and grow, you and I need to model that as well, each and every one of us. We need to treat all the people in Montgomery County, every person we encounter, as a treasured guest who may not know the saving love of Jesus. They are just someone who has not yet been invited. And if we invite them, they indeed will come. You and I think our challenge today and all the days to come is to radically expand the guest list. Amen.